Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to make this spring summer cardigan with kind of a short sleeve. So it can be a half of the sleeve, or if you put it down, you can have it as a 3/4 sleeve that kind of looks the same as the bottom part. I like it either way, and it can be changed as you wish. So this is quite an easy pattern. It is a lot of repeating and it is not difficult at all as long as you know how to do cluster stitches or double crochets, a few single crochets, and chaining and slip stitching. Other than that, it's just really quite simple, and I'm going to get you through this. Now this is going to be a part one, and in the part one we're just gonna do the top part, and I will leave the bottom and the sleeves and the edging around here for part two. Size is not a problem. I have made them much bigger. I only have a few left now, so this is a size of 6 to 9 months. It looks absolutely beautiful. As you can see right here, I can show it from the back. It's a little bit more difficult to do with one hand. So just very kind of a simple, bright looking cardigan. Now the next size that I have is a slightly bigger one. So I have a 1 to 1.5-year-old. Again, exactly the same. Choose your colors, whatever you want to do. And it looks like that. And I have one more to show. Now I have used a different yarn for this. This is a mix of acrylic and cotton. Now unfortunately I don't have any buttons that I like to use for this cardigan, so it doesn't have any at the moment. I will do that once they come. Now the thing is, you can use any yarn that you want. Obviously cotton or something a little bit thinner is great for summer, but it is draping. It is very drapey. It doesn't really hold its shape as much as the acrylic. I'm going to talk about yarn a little bit later. For now, if you like what you see, let's go and have a look at what we are going to need for this project. So we're going to need a hook. I am going to be using a 4mm hook. You have to use the hook that matches your yarn, which I'm going to talk in a little bit. The next very important thing is the measuring tape. So I have my 1 in centimeters as my size chart is. Again, this is what we're going to use to make our size. You will be looking up those measurements right here. You see the sizes and the measurements. We will not need them all, but we will be picking whichever ones you need, and I will show you how to measure to make sure that it will fit the size that you are making. I'm gonna have a photo of this on my Facebook page, and I will leave a link in the description box if you want to have a better look. So measuring tape in centimeters, perhaps a few stitch markers if you need to mark those places where the buttonholes are going to be. Other than that, we're not going to need this. Scissors, buttons, again depending on the size and what you want, 3 or 4. I'm going to have 3, and a needle for the tail ends, and that is pretty much it. And now we're going to talk about yarn. Now we're going to talk about the yarn, and now have in mind that this is very approximate. I will not be able to tell you exactly how much you're gonna need, especially for the bottom part. As you can see, I will be using a lot of colors for it, which I'm gonna talk about in a second. I can be a bit more specific about the top part. So this is the top part. This is the one that I make in this video that you're gonna see me make later on. So we don't need a whole lot for this, as I'm making a size 2 to 3 years old. 100 skein of yarn was enough. Now the yarn that I have been using is a Super Baby, and it is a 100% baby acrylic, 100 grams, 360 meters plus minus, and it says that it is a fine weight 2 yarn. It's not. I don't feel that this is fine yarn. It feels exactly, it's pretty much exactly the same. Which one is it? Doesn't matter which one. It's the same as any other of those lightweight yarns. It's not very fine at all, but you can use fine yarn if you want. The cotton one, the cotton cardigan that I have showed you before, is definitely lightweight, fine weight, and it is came out absolutely perfect, no problem at all. But this is the yarn that I have been using, and so I have made the top part, and this is how much yarn I have left. Now still a little bit there. I don't think it's enough for the next size up. So size 3 to 4 years old, you're gonna need more than 100 grams. Under the age of 3, 100 grams skein will be absolutely enough to make the top part. Hopefully that makes sense. And now the bottom part. Again, it's very difficult to say how much you're gonna need depending on how many colors you want to use and how long you want to make it. I can again be very approximate. So for up to a year, you're gonna need about 150 grams of whichever, 150 as in total, and then you work out how many colors you want to use, and so how much of each color you probably are going to need. So from 1 to about 3 years old, you're going to need about 200 grams for the bottom and for the sleeves. So let's say if you're going to use 4 colors, you might need about 50 grams of each color, which should be enough. And over that age, you're gonna need 250, about 300 grams for the skirt and the sleeves. I'm sorry, it's very approximate, but as I said, we will be using different yarn, we will be making different sizes. Just make sure that you have enough. And this is the colors that I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colors. I'm gonna probably do about 2 rows of each color, and as you can see, these skeins I have already started, but it's definitely enough for me to do 2 rows for that size. So hopefully that helped you a little bit. Like I said, make sure you have enough yarn, whichever yarn that you are using. And now we can get started on it. Okay, so to start, grab your yarn, make a little slip knot. I'm gonna put in my hook. Make sure you have measuring tape close, and we are going to start. First of all, we are going to look up the length of our starting chain. So it is different for every size. It's not very far from each other. They are quite close to each other in length, but we need to make sure that we know what we are starting with. So as I'm making a size 2 to 3 years, my starting chain should be about 39 to 40 centimeters long, not shorter than that. It can be a little bit longer, but not shorter. So make sure you look up whichever one you're doing and remember that. Now, it brings me right here. So this is my chart for the yoke, okay? I'm going to talk about it a little bit more once we start. First of all, the number in the very middle of every kind of a square is the amount of chains. So we will be chaining, let's say 52, and we will be measuring if that is the length that we need. If it's too short, we're gonna go for another one, so 56, and then we see again, we measure if that is the correct length that we need. Okay, so I'm gonna start with 52, and I just start chaining and counting my chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'm going to keep on going until I have 52 chains. And I have 52 chains right here. Now I'm going to measure, just to remind myself, 39, 40 centimeters in length. I'm gonna place my measuring tape at the very beginning, at the very first chain, and I'm gonna just give it a tiny little pull to stretch it out a little bit. So I'm at about 33 centimeters, which is too short. I need 39, 40. So I'm gonna go for the 56 chains, which is probably gonna be still too short. 53, 54, 55, 56. Again, I'm at about 37, still too short. I'm gonna go for 64. So 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, and 64. Again, so I am at about, can't really see it, sorry, the beginning, so I'm about 40, 41 centimeter. So this is perfect. If I would be short, I would go for the next number and so on until I find the closest one or a little bit longer to what I need. So 41 is absolutely perfect. I'm going to stick with 64 chains. You can have another good look if you need the length. But apart from that, we can get started. Okay, so first of all, let me talk you through this a little bit. This chart looks a little bit different from my other charts, okay? So we have 5 chains. We're gonna leave 5 chains for every corner, just because we're gonna have those cluster stitches in there. So this number right here is how many chains we're going to use to get to the first corner. But we have to have one thing in mind, okay? That every last stitch before the corner and the first one after, so last one before and the first one after, first before, last one, last before, first after, it's going to have 2 double crochets, but we will only be using this amount of chains there, okay? So hopefully I can explain it a little bit better now. Okay, so I have 64 chains. We are gonna add 1 extra chain. That is for everybody the same. So add 1 more chain, yarn over. We're gonna skip 2 chains, 1, 2, into the third one, we'll make a double crochet. Now this is 2 for me, okay? So I have 2 double crochets, or I have used up 2 chains, and I have 7 right here. So I need to make another 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this is the number right here. Now, as it is, the stitch number 7 is the last stitch before the corner. I'm gonna add 1 more double crochet into the same stitch. This is going to be our increase. We're gonna be doing increases before and after the corner. So you're gonna have number 7 here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 double crochets. That chain 2 in the beginning counts as a stitch. Now next is this 5 right here, okay? So we're going to chain 1, yarn over, we're gonna skip 2 stitches, so 1 stitch, 2, chains, so 1, 2, into the third chain, we're gonna make a cluster. So we yarn over, we go into that third chain, pull out our yarn, we have 3 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Now we're gonna leave it alone. We need to make a cluster, so we start another double crochet, yarn over, go back into that same chain, catch your yarn, pull it out. We have 4 loops. We're gonna yarn over and pull through 2 loops again. Now we're gonna do the same one more time. Yarn over, go into that same chain, catch your yarn, pull it out, 5 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. We have 4 loops left, and yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. So this is a cluster. We're gonna chain 2 now, 1, 2, and we're gonna make 1 more cluster exactly like this into the same chain. So yarn over, go into that same chain, 1 double crochet, we don't finish that, yarn over, second double crochet that we don't finish, and third double crochet we don't finish. We have 4 loops left, yarn over, pull through all of them, chain 1 and skip 2 stitches, so 1 and 2 into the third one, you make a double crochet. Now we have a number 8 right here, okay? So we're gonna use up 8 chains, but we're gonna have 10 double crochets right here. So the first one after the clusters, the first chain gets another double crochet. We're gonna have 2 there, but we count it as 1 because we're using 1 chain. So 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now again, as chain number 8 right here is our last stitch right here, we're gonna put an extra double crochet in there. Like I said, we used up 8 chains, but we have 10 double crochets because the first one and the last one before the clusters gets 2 double crochets. Next is again a corner like this. We're gonna do clusters. So before we start our cluster, we need to chain 1. I'm gonna yarn over. I'm gonna skip 2 chains, 1 and 2, into the third chain. We do a cluster. So 1 double crochet we don't finish, second double crochet we don't finish, and third double crochet we don't finish. Once we have 4 loops, yarn over and pull through all loops. Chain 2, and again 1 more cluster into that same chain. Two and 3. I'm gonna pull through all of those loops. I'm gonna chain 1. I'm gonna skip 2 stitches. Make sure you don't see the chain after can get a little bit tight there. So 1 and 2 into the third one. I make double crochet. Now again, as it is the first stitch after the cluster, after our corner, we'll make an increase there. So 2 double crochets, but we count that as 1 because we have used up 1 chain. And I have 14 right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Again, the last stitch gets 2 double crochets. I just put an extra one in there. So, like this. So, next up is our third cluster corner. So we're gonna chain 1, skip 2 chains, 1, 2 into the third one. Start making a cluster. So 1 double crochet, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all of them, chain 2, and again back into that very same chain. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna finish that cluster and chain 1. Next up again is over the shoulder on the other side. I'm gonna skip 2 chains, chain 1. This one is, you can see it's a little bit long just because we have kind of stretched that one out, so make sure you skip that into the next one. We make a double crochet. We need to make an increase right here, so 2 double crochets into that same chain, but we count that as 1, so have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Again, the last chain from this part gets a second double crochet. We're gonna chain 1 and our last clusters. So skip 2 chains into the third chain. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna finish that, chain 2, and another cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Pull through all, chain 1, and I should have 7 chains left. Excuse me, I should have yes, I'm gonna skip 2 chains, chain 1 and chain 2. The next stitch gets 2 double crochets, but I counted as 1, so I should have 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, like this. So you don't do an increase at the very end. It starts and ends with one double crochet. And this is how our first row should look like. So hopefully you understand what I mean, that we use up this number of chains, but we have 2 double crochets in the first and in the last chains. And again here, 2 and 2, but we use up 8 chains. And the front gets an increase into the very last one, or the first one after the clusters. So this is row 1. I'm going to leave this right here for a second if you need to have a look. And we can continue with row 2. I'm going to take that away. We do not need that anymore. We have all the stitches ready for us. Now we're going to chain 1. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to make a double crochet into that same stitch right under that chain 1 to the very first one. And we keep making 1 double crochet into each stitch. Until we get to the last double crochet in that row. So you see, not in that row, just before the clusters. So this is the last double crochet, and you can see the stitch is a little bit in front of it, okay? So this stitch gets 2 double crochets. We're doing the increasing before and after this the clusters. So 2 double crochets into the last stitch before the clusters. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to go into the in between those 2 clusters and make 2 clusters again. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all, chain 2, and make a cluster back in there again. After the clusters are finished, we're going to chain 1 and find that very first double crochet from the previous row. So this is a double crochet, and you can see the stitch right here. And this stitch gets 2 double crochets. 1, 2. And then we keep going with 1 double crochet into each stitch until we get to the last one before the next cluster. Again, this is my last stitch before the cluster. You can see double crochet, and this is the stitch. I make 2 double crochets in there. Now the clusters, so I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to go in between them and make my corner. Chain 2, and back in there make another cluster. Chain 1, and again the first stitch after the clusters, so this one right here, gets 2 double crochets. And we keep going with 1 double crochet until we get to the last stitch before the clusters again. And so I have 1 stitch left right here, so If you spread it out, you can see it very well right here. Last double crochet before the clusters. So I put 2 double crochets into that stitch. I'm gonna chain 1 and make a cluster in the corner. Chain 2 and another cluster. Chain 1, the next stitch, which is right here, gets 2 double crochets. And keep going with 1 double crochet until you get to that last stitch before the cluster. So there it is, the very last one. 2 double crochets in there. Chain 1 and a cluster corner. Chain 2 and another cluster in there. Chain 1 and the first stitch after gets 2 double crochets. And we continue with 1 double crochet to the end of this row. Now this is the only row where we will have to make the very last double crochet into the chains, because we have 2 chains as a first stitch from the first row. So there it is, you have 2 chains right here, so last stitch goes into the top of that chain 2. So this is the first chain, second, make a double crochet into that one. And this is how row 2 looks like. Okay, so from now on it will be a repeat of the same row. So we will be making exactly the same. The last stitch before the cluster and the one straight after on each of the corners is going to have 2 double crochets, and this is going to be a repeat until our yoke is going to be big enough. So I'm just going to show you quickly one more row. So every row is going to start with chain 1, turn around, a double crochet back into that very first stitch right here. That chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And then we keep going with 1 double crochet, until we get to the last double crochet from previous row before the cluster. So there it is. You see, this is the stitch, and I put 2 double crochets in there. 1 and 2. After that, chain 1 and make a cluster corner. Chain 2 in between the clusters. Chain 1 after, and again the very first stitch after the cluster, so this one right here gets 2 double crochets. And then 1 double crochet, last double crochet from previous row before the cluster, and I put 2 double crochets in there. Do an increase, chain 1 and cluster corner, chain 2, another cluster, chain 1, the first stitch after the cluster gets 2 double crochets. And then we keep going with 1 double crochet. Now I think that this is quite clear at the moment. I think you got the message that first and last double crochets in between the clusters get 2 double crochets apart from the front. The front 2 parts only get before the cluster 2 double crochets and right here, right after the cluster. So keep going and I will see you right here. I am at the end of row 3 and I have 3 stitches left. You can see them very clearly, 1, 2, and 3. And the last stitch, you might have to look for it. It might be a little small because that's what's left from our chain 1, but it is a full stitch. So you go in there and make a double crochet. So we're gonna have a nice and neat and straight edge. I'm gonna chain 1, turn around, and you will keep going with the same repeat. So the more rows that you are going to make, the wider and longer your yoke is going to be. Now I'm going to quickly turn off and I will come back when I have my yoke done, just because it will be easier for me to show you what we are measuring and what and where has to be. But for now you keep going. Don't forget to do those increases before and after each cluster. But rather than that, it is all the same. We just need it to get big enough for the size that we are making. So keep going and I will see you in a second. Now at this point my yoke is ready to be connected. It is long enough, which we are going to measure right now. So first of all we are going to look up the yoke right here. So according to the size that you are making, so 2 to 3 years, I need the yoke to be about 15 centimeters high. So I'm gonna pick up my measuring tape. I'm gonna put my measuring tape at the top of the first cluster and I am going to measure down. Now I am at 14 centimeters, I need 15. Now we should all be 1 centimeter short or less than 1 centimeter, okay? Now because we are going to make a double crochet right here when we are connecting, it is going to extend this measurement for about 1 centimeter. So make sure that 1 double crochet right here is going to reach this needed measurement for you. So if you're making a smaller size, you're gonna be shorter, or if you're making bigger size, you're gonna need longer yoke like this. So I'm about 1 centimeter short, and when I will be connecting, I'll have a double crochet that will get me to the 15 centimeters that I need. Okay, so this measurement is clear, so that is okay. Next up, we are going to measure the chest measurement, and we'll see if we need to add any chains underneath the armholes to extend the length of this so it would go nicely around the chest. So for that, we are going to look up the chest finished, this one right here. So again, find the length for the size that you're making. It is 60 centimeters for me. Now, as we are going to measure only a half of it, the back part, okay? We need only to check a half of this. So I'm going to divide my 60 into 2 pieces, and I'm going to have 30 centimeters. And this is what I will be looking for. Okay, so lay down flat, don't pull on it, just let it lie down as it would normally. And we're going to measure from the middle of the clusters, from one corner to another corner, right here. So, see? From one to another, and I am at 20 centimeters wide. I need 30, so I'm 3 centimeters short. Now I'm going to figure out how many chains I need to do under each armhole so that I would get to that missing length. So I'm missing 3 centimeters. I'm going to place my measuring tape at the beginning of any of the double crochets, and I'm going to see how many double crochets fit into those missing 3 centimeters. So you see, I'm trying not to stretch it out. Excuse me. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4.5 for me. So as I cannot do 4.5 chains, I'm just gonna do 5 just in case. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. It's not gonna even, you won't even really be able to see that it's 1 stitch bigger. So this is how you figure out how many chains you need to do underneath the armhole. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 4.5. I'll do 5. Now, if you end up needing more than 5 chains, okay, so this is what I'm gonna tell you now. So 6 or 7 chains are a little much to do underneath the armholes right here, because then your sleeve is going to extend a lot to the back and front. It's just not gonna look very nice. It's okay for a dress, but not very good for a little cardi. So what you can do is, instead of making 1 double crochet, as I will be doing into these clusters right here, so you can do 2 double crochets here, 2 double crochets here, and then you're going to do 2 chains less. So you're going to make up the missing 2 chains by making an extra double crochet here and double crochet here. So just in case you didn't understand what I said, let's say I needed 7 chains underneath, which is a lot, okay? So you make 2 double crochets here, then instead of 7 chains, you make 5 chains, and then again 2 double crochets here. We're just swapping 2 chains for a double crochet in each side. It will still extend the length of the chest, but without putting a whole lot of chains underneath the armhole. Okay, so I'm ready to connect, and we can start. So again, everything starts and finishes exactly the same way. Chain 1, turn around, and start making your double crochets, 1 into each stitch. So we will be just covering everything in double crochet. So no more clusters for us. We're finished with that. Okay, so we're coming closer to where our cluster was. So this is my last stitch before the cluster. I'm gonna make a double crochet here. Then we used to have a chain 1 here. I'm just gonna cover that with a double crochet. Then we have our cluster, so that is a big stitch right here for me. I'm gonna make a double crochet in there, and then a double crochet into the middle of the cluster. Just 1 for me because I have 5 chains underneath, and I don't need to put an extra 1 to make up for the chains that I need. Okay, so if you need remember I told you about those chains right there. If you have more than 5, you can put another double crochet right in there. As I don't need that, I'm just gonna chain whatever I have counted. So I have 5 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm gonna find the next corner, make sure it's not twisted. And I'm going to make 1 double crochet right here. Now again, remember, if you made 2 double crochets here, you have to do exactly the same on the other side. And then I'm gonna continue with simple double crochets. So double crochet right here, top of that cluster. It leaves a little space here, but it's okay, it's gonna cover it up, okay? You can even make it a little tighter stitch right here, like this. Then the chain 1 space, and then you have the stitches from the previous row where you put 1 double crochet into each of them and continue to the other corner right here. Again, I'm very close to that other cluster. I'm just putting double crochets everywhere I can. So this was a chain 1, do a double crochet, then the cluster on top of that cluster, make a double crochet, and into the middle, in between those clusters. Okay, so I need only 1 double crochet here. If you did 2 here, you do exactly the same on the other side. I'm gonna chain my 5 chains. Again, it has to be the same amount of chains as in the other side, so our cardigan is exactly the same on both sides. And again, into the corner right here, double crochet. After that, again, you can make it a little tighter here. So at the top of that cluster, make a double crochet into that chain 1, double crochet, and keep going till you come to the end. And this is how we connect the yoke, and you can see right now. So this is your sleeves, and it already looks a bit more like a cardigan. Now I'm gonna finish this row. So again, rows start and finish exactly the same as we did before, and I'm gonna finish this row, start the other one, and I'm gonna meet you right here so we could see what we're going to do with these chains. Now I am at those chains. I still have 1 stitch from this double crochet that I have connected to, and I just make double crochets. Is it a chain? Is it a stitch? It does not matter. It gets a double crochet, 1 into each chain or each stitch. And I continue with double crochets. Now the next bit is really quite easy. We will be just making double crochets for a few rows. We'll give it a little measure in a second. So you continue on and you do exactly the same on this chain. Then you end the row as we did before and you start another one. So now what we want is to get the cardigan, the top part of the cardigan, a little bit lower down, a little bit closer to the waist, so we can start the bottom part. Okay, so it's not the skirt, the flaring of it, it's not going to start very high up. We're going to keep it down a little bit. Now, how much to crochet? It will be different for everybody. So what we're going to look at is back, neck to waist. So this one right here. So again, look up your size according to what you are making. I'm making this size, so I get 23 centimeters in length, about that. Okay, it can be a little bit shorter because it will have the stretch, okay, because the skirt is going to be heavy. It's gonna, just the weight is gonna pull that down a little bit. Now I'm going to measure for 23 centimeters from the top of that shoulder, not the like this. I'm gonna put my measuring tape like this. I am at about 17 centimeters. So I'm gonna keep making rows until I get to 23 or a little bit shorter, somewhere around here. So approximately around there. So you are gonna have a different, if you're making a different size, you're gonna have a different length right here. So I'll probably have another, how much am I missing? I'm missing about 6 centimeters. So I'm gonna have about 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 rows. I'm gonna keep making them and I will see you then, and we will be finished, almost finished with the top part. We're gonna do the sleeves and then we will start on the fun stuff. And so I have finished my top part. As you can see, I already have 1 sleeve made, just so that I have something to show you. And now when you finish, after the last double crochet, you're gonna chain 1, cut your yarn, I already done that, and pull out your hook. So I was looking for about 23 centimeters, and it is approximately that. Now the sleeves, I have a little drawing. It's just a little something for you. Perhaps it will be easier to understand what I'm talking about. So we're gonna, first of all, we're going to look up the sleeve length. So right here, this little line here, and for the size that I'm making, it is 22 centimeters. Now our sleeve in double crochets will be about a half, and I'll tell you exactly why about. So whatever length you had, I had 22 centimeters for a full length sleeve. I'm gonna divide that into 2 and I get 11. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm gonna do 11 centimeters in double crochets and plus 1 row. However many rows I have, I just want to go a little bit past that half, so I'm gonna have plus 1 row once I have my 11 centimeters, just a little bit longer. And then we're going to measure the width of the sleeve, so upper sleeve right here, so this measurement, and I have about 11 centimeters. It can be bigger than that, don't worry, we're just checking so it's not too small. So this part right here we will measure after the first row. Should be again about 11 centimeters for me. It might be different for you. So hopefully you understand what I mean right here. So I can actually show you right here. So I was looking for 11 centimeters plus an extra row. So if I measure from the underneath the arm, you can see, so my 11 centimeters was right here. And then I just added an extra row just to give it a little bit, to go a little bit past that half of the length. Okay, we can start on the sleeves. The first thing that you want to do is you want to pick the good side, whichever one you like better. I like this side better. It doesn't really matter which one, it's just we're going to start doing the sleeves, so perhaps you have a favorite side to it. And we're going to start on the bottom of the sleeve, and this is just, we're just going to do double crochets. Make a slip knot. Connect at the very bottom. It doesn't really matter which of the chains that you're going to connect with. I'm just going to connect in the as much as in the middle as I can. We are going to chain 2, and this counts as a stitch, so our first stitch. Then we have to figure out which way we are going. So have a look at the very last row on the sleeve right here, so you can see how my one looks like. So this is the double crochets facing up. That means that I am gonna go on the inside of the sleeve just to keep the same kind of a look going, okay, so that we will be turning sides. So if your last row looks just like mine, like this, it kind of a look nice and straight with a little kind of a strand going sideways, so you will be like me. You are connecting at the bottom and going from the inside of the sleeve. Now if your last row looks a bit more like this, it's hard to see, so it's kind of a little bit more kind of a wavy, then you're going to connect right here and go from the outside of the sleeve, so you're going to the left on the outside of the cardigan. But other than that, you're going to place all of those stitches exactly where and I will show you what we're going to do. So chain 1, that counts as a stitch, and I'm turning around because I need to go from the inside of the sleeve. Now first of all, I am going to use all those chains that I have left from the chains that were under the armhole. So I'm gonna go on top of them and just make double crochets, how many ever you have, it does not matter. I have 2 on this side. Then next up for me is the double crochet where we have connected our yoke. I'm gonna put a double crochet into the bottom of this, so sort of in the bottom part, and another double crochet in the top of it. Next I have a space right here, put a double crochet there. The next double crochet goes on top of that cluster into that chain 1, and then you just keep going 1 into each stitch all the way around, whichever way you're going, until you get to the next place on this or this side where we're going to have a quick look again where we're going to place those stitches. And I got close to the other side right here, so you can see again clusters are starting soon. So I'm gonna place a double crochet into that stitch right here, then into that chain one space, into the top of that cluster, in between the two clusters. So it might be hard to see, so in between the two clusters. Then I have the double crochet again where we have connected the yoke. So one double crochet in the top part of it and one in the bottom of it. And then whatever, if we have any chains left, it will be different for everybody. So I have 2 chains here. So I make 2 double crochets. Now before joining, we want to count our stitches to make sure that we know how many we have started one sleeve. So both sleeves are at the same amount of stitches. I did count that now. I have exactly the same as on the other side. And another thing that we are going to do is we are going to measure how wide our sleeve is, just to make sure that it is wide enough for us and we can do all those decreases. Again, upper sleeve right here, it is 11 centimeters for me. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to take my measuring tape and I'm going to put my measuring tape on at the inside of the sleeve. So sort of place it nicely down and into the inside and try to do your best. So I am at about 11 and a half, 12 centimeters. So I can see right here. So I'm even a little bit over. It's a little bit bigger, which is absolutely fine. That just confirms that I do have enough place to do the decreasing. Now, if at any point that you measure this and this measures less than than it should be, you might wanna stay without any increasing for the next 2 or 3 rows. Just start a little bit later, okay? But if you are at the point where you should be or a little bit bigger, it is fine. We start decreasing straight away. So now we're going to connect. Put that away. And we're going to connect into the top of that first chain 2. So this is the first chain. This is the second chain. It's kind of a twisted because I keep turning my work around. And a slip stitch. We're gonna chain 2. We're gonna turn around. Whichever way you're going, it doesn't matter, it's the same. And the next 2 stitches are gonna be crocheted together. So yarn over, find your next stitch. So if you look at a double crochet, the stitch from that double crochet is going to be sort of in front of it. So this is the slip stitch from the chains, and the chains will be going in a row, one on top of each other. You just need to find that next stitch, like I said, double crochet, and the stitch will be in front of it. So go in there, crochet half of it, just like we did right here, but we're only going to do 2 instead of 3. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull it out, pull through 2. You have 3 loops left, yarn over and pull through all of them. And that way you lose 1 stitch. And then for the rest of the sleeve, you're gonna keep going with 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around the sleeve. And you can do a little bit of counting if you want. So the chain 2 counts as a stitch. The stitches that you have crocheted together, you can count that as 1 stitch, because you're gonna have only 1 stitch up there, although it looks like 2 double crochets. And you just keep going. At the end of this row you should have 1 less stitch. So keep going and I'll meet you right here. Okay, I am at the end of this row and you will be finishing into the very last stitch right here. I just stopped a few before, so you can see again quite clearly that this double crochet has a stitch right here, a little bit to the left of the double crochet, and then again the very last stitch. So right here it has a stitch a little bit in front of it as well. So that is it. Then you're going to again to slip stitch into the second chain. chain 1 and chain 2, go into the middle of that second chain, make a slip stitch. I'm gonna chain 2, turn around, and again the first 2 stitches get to be crocheted together. So again, if you have a look, so these are chains, all chain 2s. The next double crochet is right here, and his stitch is a little bit to the left, a little bit in front of it. So go in, catch your yarn, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, go into the next stitch, catch your yarn, pull out, yarn over 2 loops, and yarn over, go through all the rest of the loops. And then you just keep going again all the way around, no more decreasing. And this is what we are going to do in each row all the way down to when we get to that point where we need to stop, because because our sleeves are going to be long enough. Now, just one more thing that I want to show. I'm gonna come to the end of this row, and again we're just gonna have a look where the stitch is from that decrease from the previous row. And I'm at the end of row 3, so you can see again 2 stitches. One is very easy to see right here, and the other one is quite close to those chains right here. Okay, so this is where we have crocheted them together, so you can see it looks like a little mess right here, but it's actually a stitch on top of that. So make a double crochet there, and there you go. Again, find that second chain. So first chain, second, I'm gonna go into the middle, make a slip stitch, I'm gonna chain 2, turn around, and keep going. Again, first of all, you find that first stitch, so double crochet, and the stitch is a little in front of it, and crochet them together, and the next stitch. So if you find it difficult to figure out which stitch is the last one or the first one, make sure you count your stitches. And in every row after, if you do a decrease, in every row you should have 1 less stitch, and that is how we're gonna keep going. So I will do the rest off camera, and I will come back to you when my sleeve is finished. And I need 1 more row. I was just going to show you that 11 centimeters was a half of my sleeve. So if I measure under the arm, so you can see for up to right here, it is about 11 centimeters, as you can see. So once you reach that, you just add another row just to get over that half. So exactly the same. Crochet 2 together, and I am just going to keep going around, and just make sure that first and last rows have the same amount of stitches, so our both sleeves look exactly the same. So this is going to be the end of part 1. I left all the fun bits for part 2, just so I have a little bit more time and I can explain it a little bit more, although there is not a whole lot to do. It's just gonna be a lot of repeating rows. Excuse me, but for now we are almost done. I'm just gonna quickly finish this row. We still have a few stitches left. And my last stitch, I'm gonna connect to that second chain. I'm gonna chain 1 and cut my yarn. I'm gonna leave a little bit longer tail so I can nicely hide it later, and we can have a look what our work looks like. So as you can see, it doesn't all fit in there. So thank you very much for watching. This is all in part 1. I'm gonna see you in part 2. Bye for now.